My name is Greg Merchant. I'm a managing director in Monitor Deloitte, where I focus on education. I really appreciate the opportunity to come up here and talk to you today about a connection that's been touched on a number of times today. And that's the connection between the classroom and the home in particular. I'm going to also add a little bit of insight and hopefully some useful data. I've noticed many times when the data goes up on the screen, so do all the phones snapping pictures, so please snap away. And I also do appreciate that I am the obstacle between you and a Saturday night in Las Vegas. So I will aspire to keep things rolling. So let's get started. All right. Since we're making this a family affair, Krishna got to introduce his son, Jamie got to show his kids. These are my kids. And during the holidays, I, like probably most of the people in this room, had an opportunity to spend an extended period of time observing them on a regular basis. Now, yeah, I could make a joke about it. I'm glad it only comes once a year, but that might reflect on my parenting skills. But when we spent that time together, I kept a real close eye on how much digital technology was hitting them on a daily basis. I knew I was coming to CES, kind of like when you have a diet and they say write down everything that you're eating and then you sob at the end of the day. It's a similar result. But I was blown away by how much technology has permeated their lives. And in particular, I was amazed at when they were opening all of their gifts, just how much digital technology was in each one of those. And I had the opportunity to sit in on a couple sessions from the kids at Play Track yesterday, and Warren led a number of great panels for that. That's clearly not stopping anytime soon. But what was most astonishing was kids, as they tend to do, very quickly were sorting these new technology products into the new favorite toy they had to play with immediately versus the ones that get kind of heaped into the pile that makes parents panic about whether or not you have the receipt. So, as I guess I was looking for receipts, I thought that's actually a pretty good parallel for the challenge that ed tech adoption in the classroom is facing. We know, and Jamie alluded to this, we have so much technology in our daily lives that we know what really good ed tech looks like. And we also know really quickly when something falls short. Parents know it, teachers know it, and students know it. Now, in this environment, in this room, this crowd clearly knows that the role for technology in the classroom is a long way from finally defined. And there are enough variables in play when you think about it getting adopted across all the schools, classrooms, students, teachers across the country that it's going to be a pretty lumpy ride. But you can't deny that the evolution is taking place, and these guys are going to have a learning experience that's different from what we all knew, and by the time they're done, it's going to be different from what they know today. Now, the way the evolution is played out to date is obviously a really early emphasis on devices and focused content solutions. But now we're moving towards integrated solutions that break down boundaries, that make the connections that matter. And as we move from content to connections, it's pretty clear to us, just like digital technology in our daily lives, that within EdTech, a solution that can solve multiple problems and address multiple silos is going to be better than a narrow, focused solution. Now, within this environment where connections matter, the $27 billion question facing the EdTech sector is which of those connections are going to matter most, and what are the drivers that are going to determine which matters most? And that makes a new reality. And that reality is that you need to have a very good understanding of the behaviors, the preferences, the beliefs, the tendencies of the actors that are going to form those connections to actually determine what the future of that home-to-school connection is going to look like in order to put together a winning strategy. And that fueled Deloitte to want to take a deeper look at some of these connections. And there are a myriad of connections that we could talk about today, and some of them have already been focused on. But these are three that are going to play some of the most significant roles in determining what the future of EdTech really looks like. The first is Nirvana. the integrated digital ecosystem. This is where the formal parts of the education ecosystem, schools, degrees, et cetera, can be combined with the informal, mentorship, real-world learning with capabilities and credentials somewhere in the middle. But it gets us out of the fragmented environment that most of us know today. The second connection that's going to have a lot to do with the way things shake out is the integrated student learning life cycle. This is creating that continuum for a student from pre-K to the last lesson they ever learn, so that not only what the student knows is being tracked, but how they learned it. So that every time new teachers and students run into each other, they don't all feel like they're starting from scratch. But it's this third connection where the largest amount of influence can be applied today. And this is one that most of our clients are interested in. Most of the people in this room are going to be interested as well. These are the integrated technology solutions, the practical solutions that are solving the functional problems that exist across academia today. These are the solutions that keep a teacher from having to have 5 different Excel sheets and 10 different logins to keep the various responsibilities in sync. And these are also the solutions that allow learning to be extended beyond the time limitations of the school day or the class and the physical boundaries of the school. Now, it was that particular connection that most appealed to us, not only because of the opportunity that exists as EdTech continues to grow, but because of the opportunity to improve learning outcomes. And frankly, those first 2 connections require a lot of people who don't always see eye to eye to play nicely together. Let's be honest, those are going to take a little time. So the third area was the one that most appealed to us, and we decided that the first thing we wanted to do was understand the data. You can't have a good solution, you can't come up with a good perspective on the way things are going to play out if you don't understand the way things work today. So we took a look at the available research. And what might not be a surprise to many of you is there's not a lot of great research about the connection. There's great research about a lot of different facets of it, but none that really focused on the connection. So in the interest of getting a data set, we went out and developed one by conducting our inaugural digital education survey. Now, it has a broad demographic blend, and it focuses on that home-to-school connection from the perspectives of the 3 most important players in it: parents, teachers, and students. Anything that looked at anything less than all 3 of those groups was going to be an incomplete picture of what's happening. So every time we had an opportunity, we asked all 3 of those groups the exact same question to triangulate on what's really driving things. And we also took a number of side trips to look at the subtopics that are going to most influence the way the home-to-school connection actually plays out. Things like how devices are used in the home and in the classroom, attitudes towards security and privacy, attitudes about what technology does to the role of the educator, what's the role technology could play to help abate the summer slide, and a number of other things that unfortunately we won't have time to go through today. The full survey was about 120 questions, so nobody's making it to the strip if I go through all of them. So we're going to do a pretty quick flyby. But the reality is the impetus of this study was to add clarity, to add an objective view on what's really happening. Because I think we would all agree that a lot of decisions are made about product design, about product launch, based on hunches or based on a dated understanding. So what we tried to do was provide an objective data set about what's going on. And so not everything in this might blow your socks off. It's not intended to. It's intended to provide clarity, and it's intended to provide objectivity about what people's attitudes, behaviors, and tendencies are as the connection between home and school really plays out. So let's hop into it. Not my kids. When you look at the landscape, we knew, first of all, in order to understand the connection, we had to understand crisply the current landscape. And so we asked a host of questions to our survey respondents, found some interesting results that are probably hard to read from the back of the room. The first is that 35% of teachers said that they use education technology every day in their classroom to make learning more interesting. And 80% of teachers said they use it at least once a week. That means EdTech's doing a pretty good job of getting into the classroom. We also found some interesting tendencies about devices. One of the more surprising was how pronounced and how quickly attitudes towards tablets and laptops switch as you get older. We knew there was some switch, but we didn't understand that it would be quite that pronounced. So if you're thinking about what devices you want to be planning for or purchasing, these are things you have to take into account. We also asked teachers to try to get a perspective on what they felt about their future, where they thought it was all heading. 75% of teachers said that they expected digital learning materials to replace textbooks within the next 10 years. Now, even if that's directionally correct, imagine the amount of transformation that's going to be required from education companies, it's going to be required from the way homework gets done, from procurement occurs, and the way teaching occurs if textbooks are gone by 2027. And then we also asked teachers where they felt they stacked up. Tech can come really fast. And so 4 out of 10 teachers said that they felt that they were behind the curve when it came to understanding what technology options were available for their classroom. And it's not up here, but 4 out of 10 also said that they felt they were behind the curve when it came to adoption of technology within their classroom. Understanding one side of the connection, you got to understand the other. So we asked questions about the usage of devices at home. 90% of the students surveyed said that they had access to digital learning materials at home. And 2/3 of them said that they first accessed digital learning materials at home before the age of 5. Seems to be a bit of a magic number. Now, I don't know about you, but my first reaction was 5 actually seems a little old. And I think what you're actually seeing here is the result of the iPhone being 9 years old. So the right side of this has some adoption influence in it. And I think as additional surveys are done and additional looks at this are taken, you're going to find this to get compressed dramatically left. I think it was also interesting that the survey found when parents of preschoolers said, what are the reasons that you acquire digital learning materials at home? 51% of them said, because my kids asked for it. It's a pretty good marketing effort to pre-K. One of the trickiest things when you think about launching a product and you think about having it used in the classroom is understanding the relationship between the belief and the practice. So we asked teachers, what are your beliefs about technology's ability to make a big difference across a variety of different variables? We only put 2 up here, but the results were pretty indicative of every single response. And that was somewhere between 60 and 80% of parents would say, of teachers would say, we believe that technology can have a big difference. And then we asked them, well, how often do you regularly use technology? Do you regularly use technology to actually accomplish this? And the responses were usually somewhere between 25 and 40. And that gap represents the challenge and the opportunity. Because both of these bars, the belief and the adoption, can be raised going forward, and the gap between them desperately needs to be shrunk. So once we understood a little bit about the current landscape, we wanted to get deeper into the motivations. What's really driving someone choosing product A over product B? And I think it's a legitimate question to ask, well, is there motivation? Is there genuine motivation from teachers, parents, and students to have a more robust home-to-school connection? Good news is yes. 88% of parents and 84% of teachers said that they wanted more school-based content at home. So my response to that was, okay, what did kids come in at like 15%? 75. Parents, teachers, and kids are all looking for a stronger connection between the home and the school. So then we went into the individual survey respondents to find, and this might be one of those that doesn't knock your socks off, is for teachers, engagement drove the bus. Well, that was a bad joke. But the reality is that, as we all know, teachers are competing with literally everything that could be bouncing around in a kid's head inside the school. And when you're outside the school, you're competing with that much more stuff that is readily accessible. And so it's no surprise that teachers would favor engagement over every other attribute, including skills development, personalization, students' own choice, and collaboration. When we asked parents the same question, they had a similar priority for engagement, but if they're going to have their kids spending time working with digital learning materials at home, they want them to also be learning. So it was slightly edged it. Now an interesting wrinkle about parents is that when faced with the potential of the home-to-school connection, the question comes up, can you really grow the pie? If you get access to a kid's time outside of school, is the parent even going to let them participate and spend more time on digital devices? So we asked them exactly that. How many parents out there actually put digital limitations on their kids' digital usage at home? 81% said yes. Who knows how many of them actually regularly enforce it? We'll ask that on the next one. But 81% said that we put digital limitations. And then we asked the follow-up question, which is, okay, if there's an educational component based in the digital materials, are you going to let them spend more time? Can you grow the pie? And you can see for videos, apps, even video games, resounding yes. For students, we asked them a number of questions as well. And one of the great things about the data set that's been cultivated is we can slice and dice it a lot of different ways. So in this case, we asked, what makes them want to learn when they're not in school? For grades 4 through 8, fun, not a shock for anybody. But when you become a jaded 15-year-old ninth grader, the ability to use technology to learn new things starts to take precedence. You see a substantial increase in getting ready for college as well. The other benefit of having data that you can cut and slice and dice like this is that we were able to assemble a number of personas, because you start to see signals in the way people are responding. So you would market and you would launch differently against a student who says, I want to do what my parents expect of me, and I also want to get good grades, versus somebody who says, top priority is fun, second priority is fun, third priority is fun. We all know that teachers are important. But when you're making investments, when you're starting up a company, when you're launching a product, you have to decide how you're going to allocate your budget. Where does the next dollar go? There wasn't a ton of information about, well, just how important is a teacher. So we looked at that. We asked, from an influence perspective, parents, who do you trust most for recommendations about digital devices and educational learning materials? We expected teachers to be high. We didn't expect it to be that high. It dominated everything. So we've heard a theme, and I've heard it in a couple different tracks. There's a lot of concern around where people get their recommendations. Parents seem to trust teachers far and away beyond anything else. And interestingly, the further you get away from that classroom, the more trust seems to kind of atrophy. So knowing that teachers influence parents, we asked teachers, well, who do you trust? The result was even greater. They trust other teachers, and at the same time, the amount of trust that you see kind of atrophies the further you get outside of the classroom. Now, one interesting little nit in the data that I thought was interesting was teachers actually trust their own students pretty much when it comes to digital devices. I think that's a bit of an appreciation by digital natives that the younger folks, the students, actually pretty much have a good finger on the pulse of what the latest and greatest is. We also asked, as one of those sort of side focus areas, about the role of technology in combating the summer slide. Over 75% of the students we asked said that they did some type of summer learning. Not all digital, we asked all types. But what was very interesting for us is that amongst those who took up one or multiple of these different tools, school and teacher recommendations was on par with just doing it for fun, and it far outweighed, I had to do it because it was required. In the case of educational games, I think that's a very interesting result, to see that teachers making kids aware of educational games actually was greater in influencing them to actually use it than kids who just would find it on their own. Again, speaking to the influence of teachers not only on parents, not only on each other, but also outside the bounds of the school year. And then finally, for teachers, we wanted to understand how the changing demographic could really help or hinder the adoption of digital technology in the classroom. You see an almost a 20% gap between teachers with less than 10 years of experience and those with greater than 20 years of experience in terms of their belief that ed tech can make a large positive difference in the classroom. So when you're thinking about who to have the next conversation with or the next time you're in a school, the question is, well, maybe in addition to the department head and the administration, it's worth spending a couple hours talking to who your most enthusiastic adopters are going to be, and those are the digital natives who are now the digital teachers. So ultimately, we understand adoption is a main goal of a lot of the different companies and organizations that are looking at this, because it will make a difference, because it will improve learning outcomes, but because in many of these enterprises are commercial. So we wanted to understand, well, when it comes to adoption, we've already talked about a few of the different factors. But we wanted to understand from those who resist ed tech, the holdouts, the people who say, I don't want it in my home, I don't want it in my classroom, what is holding it back? What are they not getting? When we ask teachers, number one, training. We all know professional development is a big concern. They don't feel comfortable with the solutions. Number two was connection. And in this case, connection means integration in the classroom. When a teacher's going from lecture to website to simulation back to lecture, each one of those transitions is an opportunity to lose the classroom. And so they want to make sure that it can be integrated into the classroom, they can trust the technology, and that they know how to use it and have the confidence to do it. And then third was engagement, which we've already talked about. Parents, similar motivations, just a different order. The connection for them, though, and I've spoken about this with a few people today, is about genuine connection into the classroom. It's not a newsletter that comes out, or here's a login, come in and see what your kid's grade is. It's understanding what the lesson plans are. It's understanding what your kid learned today. It's understanding really what's going on in the classroom rather than just providing an occasional heads up. Another interesting finding that we had, a slight aside, was we asked parents and teachers if they had too much communication between the school and home right now, just the right amount, or not enough. 1% of parents said too much. 3% of teachers. It's a giant opportunity to improve the communication between the home and the class. And then their third was engagement as well. I mean, these are the same students that the parents are talking about, so they understand engagement matters quite a bit. Kids are looking for the same motivations that they see in their regular entertainment. The reality is, outside of the classroom, you are competing with Call of Duty, whether or not you want to admit it. They're looking for things that are easy to use, they're looking for things that are fun, and they're looking for things that are portable. Now, there are interesting things that can be done to improve the uptake of each one of these groups. For teachers, you could do things like continue to cultivate advocate communities so that teachers have an opportunity to make recommendations happen, and you have, frankly, a megaphone to talk to a lot of teachers at one time. You could have credentialization that's permanent in order to get certified on different solutions, so there's a proactive incentive for teachers to go out and learn about your solutions rather than having to wait for someone in procurement to have made a decision that that's what's going to get rolled out. You could also provide very extensive simulations so that parents who are a little bit, teachers are a little bit nervous about how it's actually going to function in the classroom can see how they can use your technology very effectively in a variety of different settings. And by the way, I know these are all in play to varying degrees right now. With parents, the biggest thing would be to engage them early. We've all seen what happens when the dialogue between ed tech and parents is a reactive one. It becomes a defensive conversation, and frankly, parents have stopped listening already. Engaging them early, convincing them of the skill benefits that their child will accrue, as well as understanding the value of the solution, that's an opportunity to have a proactive, constructive dialogue with the parents. And for kids, the reality is you can't be afraid of doing the Pepsi challenge. Ed tech solutions against the other distractions that are going out there. Now, I'm not saying clearly. You can't have everything be Call of Duty, but it has to at least clear a threshold with the kid to be worth their time. If the child does not think that it is cool enough to be spending time, they're outside of school on it, doesn't matter. They're going to do the bare minimum. If teachers aren't comfortable with the solution, it's never going to see the light of day in their classroom. If parents aren't convinced of the skills that they're going to get, they're never going to push their child to actually explore it more. And each one of these approaches, like I said, will move the ball forward a little bit, but none of them will be as effective as engaging all three of these together. Too many marketing strategies have focused on one or two of these and have left the other part of the equation out. I mean, we talked earlier about connected ecosystems. This is a three-legged stool. If you haven't engaged all three of them, and maybe not with equal intensity, but if you have not come up with an approach to actually engage them, you risk serious rejection of the different products that you might be offering. So, to wrap it up, there's an opportunity. We all understand that there's a tremendous opportunity in connecting the home and the school more directly. This information is designed to help provide objective perspective, to give people more confidence about the decisions that are being made. Many times, bet the company decisions about product design and about launch strategy. So, hopefully, this will help provide a little bit more confidence and clarity amongst folks to make those types of decisions and frankly, take education technology and the home-to-school connection away from something that's just an interesting idea that has a lot of potential and turn it into real solutions that are going to get the traction necessary to succeed.